Does facing the London system bother you? Well, today we're going to change that. And we're going to change that with a gambit, the taxpayer gambit. So d4, knight f6, bishop to f4. This is the London system. I don't know why, but whenever I see it, I'm like, oh, my opponent's a liberal. So what do you do against liberals? You pose a question to them very early on. Pawn to c5, a gambit. We give up a pawn for activity. It's not like modern day taxes where you give a lot of your money up, they spend it on things you don't agree with, then they blow out the deficit and the money you do keep is worth less. You're giving something to get something. Makes some sense. So, pawn to c5. What are they going to do? Are they going to yell and scream at you? Are they going to dye their hair blue? Or are they going to explain their reasoning? And then you can see that it doesn't make too much sense often. So let's put our theoretical shades on and get into it. The moves we're going to look at are knight to f3, pawn to d5, d takes c5, pawn to e3, and pawn to c3, all of which will leave black with a fine and good position. Let's start with knight f3. I believe this is the worst move they have, at which point we do take on d4. I don't think they went knight f3 to take with the queen, because then you go knight c6, gaining a tempo. You're happy there. Even worse, though, is to go knight takes d4 if they go through with their plan. Do you see the tactic? The move is pawn to e5. Move order does matter. You give them this fork, you might be like, you just lost a pawn. I'd be like, no, I didn't, because I am winning the bishop. The reason you can't give the queen check on a5 first is because then they just go bishop to d2. They save their position rather, or even queen to d2 would be even better, and you don't get anything out of it. So that's if knight to f3. Not a good move by them. All right, now let's look at pawn to d5. This is like a better banco, which is why I love it so much. You go pawn to b5, right? Get that banco pawn structure, but you're not even losing a pawn. One. Two, the reason it's bad for them is their bishop really needs to be on c1 facing the banco, guarding this b2 pawn because of all the tactics. And what I mean by banco is basically you've made them overextend onto the light squares. So this dark squared fianchetto is going to do you wonders in the middle game. And you see they don't have a bishop on c1, so it's going to work out even better. I can make a banco video, play that all day, every day. Favorite opening, other than the King's Gambit. Maybe favorite opening as black, I would say. So, what to do if they take? You could cash out right now and win the pawn back with the queen on c5. I play knight to a6, and I'd like to win it back with the knight, right? Pawn d6, pawn g6, bishop g7. Your position just plays itself, essentially. And they can't go b4 because of the knight. What do you do if they go bishop to e3? I like a tricky line. I like going knight to g4, attacking the bishop, trying to mess up their pawn structure, open up their king. So logically, I believe they would go bishop to d4 to keep holding on. And now you have pawn to e5 attacking the bishop. It's going to get a little complicated over here, but look how cool it could get. Pawn to e3, saving the bishop. Saving the bishop because they're attacking the knight. So you cash out. You go knight takes f2. They have to take back with the king, at which point you do snag the bishop and find the only move for advantage in this position. Knight takes c5. Do you think a London player wants to face this? I don't think so. I think they want to pre-move their position, not answer any questions, go about their day. You'd be like, no, I am attacking you. You got to answer this. Make it make sense. King to e1. We go queen to b6, a common move in this line. We're going to look at the queen b6 lines, but you're aiming at this knight. You're also threatening bishop f2, queen e3 checkmate, and queen e2 does not exactly save the day for them because after king to d8, the position favors you. So yeah, this battery gives you more than enough compensation. I think the best they probably have is going knight to h3, at which point I would just castle and look at all the activity you have. It's quite crazy. And they move their king. They can't castle. They'd never be able to castle kingside anyway. So that's a fun one. I hope your opponents try to hold on to the pawn. All right, so that's if they take. What to do if they play normally? So we went over push, takes, knight f3. Now let's look over the main line. Actually, let's look over c3 first and then e3, which is the main line. c3 is not a very good move, but it's one you got to look at. Queen to b6, this is common on e3, c3, and in the line we just saw. Now, what do they do here? I'm assuming they go queen b3, at which point you get this favorable queen trade. They're left with double isolated pawns. You're gaining a tempo on them. And again, you're going to go d6, g6, bishop g7, play it systematically. Sometimes there's even knight over here, and you could be annoying over here on b4. So say like, okay, knight f3, the sharpest line would be knight to d5, gaining yet another tempo, and after bishop to g3, for example, you go knight b4, and it's very hard for them to hold on to this position. They got to go knight a3, you could go d5, you're going to connect. Life is pretty good for black here. All right, let's keep going. I would say maybe one thing you need to be a little careful of is if they go queen c2 or queen c1. You do take, but do not lose this bishop. Very important. Go knight c6 to connect your rook to your bishop. Again, you're gaining a tempo, and again, you can just develop normally. So now let's get into the main line. See, the theory here is really not so bad. Pawn e3. Well, on pawn e3 and pawn c3, you do the same thing. So what do? You go queen to b3, aiming at this pawn. I don't think many people are going to take here, but if they do take, I would recommend taking on c5. And again, you have this normal position. I'm being, what's the word? I'm repeating myself a lot, but it's a very systematic position. White's not going to be able to pre-move because the position opens up so early on. They need to think. They don't like thinking if they're playing the London. So the common moves are knight c3 and knight a3. I get knight a3 more often. Oftentimes they transpose because both of which we're cashing out. We're taking this pawn on b2. So you won't lose against the London. One thing they could do here is, okay, they're all going to go knight to b5, right? That's the point of moving their knight. And it looks quite scary. They're threatening this fork on c7. But what's the move that saves black? Knight to d5, backwards guarding, threatening their bishop. This knight really needs to stay on b5 because if it doesn't, there's queen c3 check, winning the game. Now, if they want to be a true London player, they're going to go for this perpetual that you would need to accept. So if you want to play this against higher rated players, I won't blame you because you don't want to draw lower rated players. But if they don't go for a draw, look at how deep these lines go. So for example, the best move is pawn to a3. You might be like, what does that do? We're going to get into it. There's two lines here. I'm going to show a queen sack imbalance line and then just a line where you're slightly better. So first, let's look at the queen sack. Pawn to a6. You might be like, a queen sack? What is this guy talking about? Well, rook to b1, queen a2, and the move queen to c1 actually traps your queen. At this point, you do take the knight. They go rook to a1. You take the rook. And what is going on here? I don't know. That's a great question. The best move is e5. But I'm going to give a different line, but this is how you should play against it. You get a bunch of activity on a3. You have full material compensation, minus a pawn. And it's very hard to play with this queen on a1. I mean, their queen side has been, look at their queen side. There's self-explanatory. What I currently do is I take the bishop on f4, and then I go pawn c4. It's very hard to play this for white. Say knight f3, we go pawn e6, aiming in at a3, and then oftentimes they're going to be like, all right, I got to win this b5 pawn back. I don't want to get discover attacked, so I'm going to go queen b2. But you just go knight c6, and again, how does white play this? They're going to have back rank problems very quickly. Say they snag this pawn on b5, for example. You snag this pawn. You see they have back rank problems. They're going to need to deal with bishop b4 and an assortment of threats. Full compensation easily. So that's what I like to do against it. Now that's the queen sack line. Now let's look at the line that helps you maintain an advantage, and that is the move knight to c3. So again, we are sacrificing. Obviously they cannot take your knight because of this. They're going to fork you. You're going to go king d8. They can't yet snap your rook off because then you snap their queen off. So they're going to move their queen to c1. At which point you do trade queens, and kind of like a fried liver, why is black better here? Well, the move pawn to e5, cutting the connection between the bishop and the knight. They take back with the bishop to maintain the connection, and then you disconnect them yet again. They are going to take your rook, but you're going to take their bishop. And why is black better in this position? Black is simply better because, well, that is an absolute unit of a knight. Let's just get that out there. This is not a unit of a knight. That is a trapped knight that you're going to win by going b6, bishop b7. And then you're going to have two minor pieces on an open board for a rook and a pawn, which is much better. So, fun positions. Worst case, you're going to draw. Best case, you're going to win. There's not much losing with this line, and that's why I like it. and it's a gambit. You give up a pawn, you get activity, fun stuff. So we're taking our theory glasses off. Give it a try. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Have a great one. Boom.